In a small town, there was a young woman who worked as a waitress in a tiny, crowded cafe. She wore simple clothes that were a little worn out, and her hands were rough from daily chores. Every day, she would wake up before the sun, preparing herself for a long day of work. She served customers with a soft smile and polite words, even when some people were rude or impatient. People in town often overlooked her, thinking she was just another ordinary waitress with no special qualities. They didn't know that behind her calm eyes, there was a secret, a hidden part of her life that she kept close to her heart. Her love for music had started when she was very young. She remembered the first time she touched a piano, the gentle keys pressing under her fingers, producing sounds that felt like magic. From that moment, she knew that music was her escape, her way of expressing feelings she could not put into words. At home, there was no piano, so she spent hours imagining melodies, humming tunes softly while doing daily chores. She dreamed of sitting in front of a real piano, letting her emotions flow freely into the music. But life was hard, and her responsibilities often took the first place. She had bills to pay and a family to support. Still, she never let go of her dream. The cafe where she worked had an old piano in the corner. It was a simple instrument, a little dusty with a few chipped keys. But to her it was a treasure. She would often sneak moments to sit by it when the cafe was quiet, pressing the keys softly, letting the music fill the empty space. It was her time to breathe, her small moment of freedom amid the chaos of orders, clattering dishes and chatter. Each note she played carried her feelings, a mix of sadness, hope, and longing. Some customers noticed her playing occasionally, but most were too busy to pay attention, and some even made fun of her, calling her foolish for pretending to be a musician. Despite the mocking, she never stopped. She knew that music was not about applause or recognition. It was about expressing what was inside. She practiced every chance she got, learning from her mistakes and teaching herself new techniques. Sometimes she would stay late after her shift, quietly playing in the empty cafe, imagining that she was performing on a grand stage, with hundreds of people listening. She pictured their faces, hoping that one day, she could touch them with her music just as she touched herself. Her life was not easy. She faced many challenges and moments of doubt. Some days, she felt exhausted, wondering if she was chasing a dream that would never come true. She saw others who were more confident, more polished, getting opportunities she could only imagine. Yet, every time she sat at the piano, all her worries melted away. The music reminded her that she had something special, something that no one could take away. It was a small secret world that belonged only to her. Even with her talent, she remained humble. She never boasted about her abilities. She kept her passion private, sharing it only in small moments with herself and the few who cared to notice. To the world, she was just a hard-working waitress, serving coffee, cleaning tables, and taking orders with a smile. But inside, she was alive with music, her heart beating in rhythm with every melody she created. One day, a regular customer stayed longer than usual. He noticed her watching the door for a moment when the cafe was quiet, her eyes flickering toward the old piano. She hesitated, then pressed a few keys softly. The man paused, surprised by the beauty of the sound. He leaned closer, listening carefully as she played, her fingers moving delicately over the keys. He saw the concentration on her face, the emotion in her eyes. It was clear that she was not just playing music. She was living it. He didn't speak at first, afraid to disturb the moment. The melody wrapped around the small cafe, filling the space with warmth, sadness, and hope all at once. The woman didn't notice him watching. She was lost in her own world, letting every feeling pour out through the piano. The man left without saying much, but that moment stayed with her. She didn't realize how much impact a single performance, even a quiet one, could have on someone. That night, as she walked home, she thought about the way music could touch hearts without words, how it could connect people in ways nothing else could. She felt a spark of hope, imagining that maybe, just maybe, one day her music could reach more people than the walls of this small cafe. Life continued in its usual rhythm. She worked her long shifts, cleaned up after the messy customers, and endured the occasional rude comment. Yet, she carried a quiet confidence inside her, a knowledge that her talent was real and meaningful. Even if no one else recognized it yet, she knew that her passion was worth every moment of effort and every late night spent practicing alone. She kept her dream alive, nurturing it carefully, like a fragile flower growing in a harsh environment. She often imagined a day when she would play in front of a real audience, where people would not judge her by her clothes or her job, but by the music that came from her heart. She pictured their faces, their reactions, the way they might sit in silence, completely absorbed in the sound she created. It seemed impossible, yet the thought filled her with determination. Every note she played, even when unnoticed, was a step closer to that dream. In her quiet moments, she thought about the life she wanted. She wanted to inspire people with her music, to show that no matter where you come from, you could achieve something beautiful if you stayed true to your passion. She wanted to prove to herself, more than anyone else, that talent and heart were stronger than circumstances or ridicule. That belief kept her moving forward, even on the hardest days. The young waitress didn't know that her life was about to change in a way she had only imagined in her dreams. An opportunity was coming, one that would test her courage and allow her to share her gift with the world. She would face laughter, doubt, and disbelief, but her music would speak louder than any words or judgments. Her story was just beginning, and the first part of her journey was filled with quiet strength, hidden talent, and an unwavering love for the piano. This love would soon turn the ordinary into the extraordinary, capturing hearts in ways she had never expected. One morning, the young waitress noticed something different in the cafe. A man she had never seen before walked in. He had an air of curiosity, his eyes moving slowly across the room, observing everything. He seemed interested in the people and the atmosphere, but what caught his attention most was the corner of the cafe where the old piano sat. The waitress, busy arranging plates and refilling coffee cups, felt a small flutter of nervousness. She had played the piano there many times, but never in front of someone who seemed to really notice. The man approached her when the cafe was quiet. He asked her politely if she had ever played in front of a larger audience. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Just here, sometimes, when no one is watching," she said softly. He smiled warmly and told her he was organizing a charity event at the town hall in a few days. He had been searching for someone with real talent, someone whose music could touch hearts. After a short pause, he asked if she would consider performing. The offer made her heart pound. It was both thrilling and terrifying. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was real, fear and excitement fought within her. She took the man's card and thanked him quietly. Later, when she closed the cafe for the night, she sat alone on the small wooden chair, staring at the old piano. Her hands itched to play. She thought about the event, imagining herself standing in front of a crowd, the piano under her fingers, the lights shining down. But doubt crept in. Could she really perform in front of strangers who might not understand her? What if they laughed at her like some customers already did here? She shook her head, trying to push away the fear, reminding herself that this was a chance she could not waste. For the next few days, she could hardly focus on her work. Every spare moment, she spent by the piano, practicing, replaying melodies, and imagining different pieces that might fit a performance. She tried to picture the audience, their reactions, and what she wanted to make them feel. Each day, the piano seemed to respond to her emotions, the notes flowing more naturally as her confidence grew. Even though the cafe was still crowded and noisy, she created a small space of her own, a world where only her music and heart existed. Friends who worked with her noticed the change. She seemed lighter, more focused, yet also more nervous. Some asked if she was worried about the event. She smiled but didn't reveal her fear completely. She had learned over the years that people often discouraged others from chasing dreams, thinking it was safer to stay ordinary. But she refused to let that stop her. This opportunity was rare, perhaps the only one she would ever get, and she wanted to honor it fully. The night before the event, she barely slept. Her mind was alive with possibilities. She imagined walking onto the stage, feeling the polished keys beneath her fingers, and letting the music tell her story. She rehearsed melodies quietly in her room, whispering the notes to herself, adjusting tempo and feeling. She thought about the people she had served in the cafe, about the struggles she had faced, and about the small victories that had brought her to this moment. Each memory became a note, a rhythm, a pulse that she could share with the world. The next day, she prepared carefully. She picked a simple but neat outfit, something that represented her modest self without drawing unnecessary attention. She wanted the music to speak, not her appearance. As she arrived at the town hall, the size of the place made her heart race. Hundreds of seats stretched before her, with people already chatting, some looking skeptical. The grandeur of the hall and the presence of important guests were intimidating. She took a deep breath, remembering the long hours she had spent with the piano, the sacrifices she had made, and the hope she carried. This was her moment. When her name was called, she walked slowly to the piano. Whispers followed her, some curious, some mocking. She could feel eyes on her, measuring her, judging her for being a simple waitress. The thought made her stomach churn, but she refused to let it stop her. She reminded herself that these were only strangers, that the music was stronger than their judgments. Sitting down, she let her hands rest gently on the keys. The room fell quiet, waiting, sensing that something important was about to happen. Her first note was soft, almost timid. She held it, letting it resonate, feeling the vibrations through the wood and into her heart. The audience stirred slightly, some turning their heads, unsure what to expect. Then she began to play, each note flowing more confidently than the last. She did not rush. She let the music breathe, letting the melody carry her emotions to every corner of the hall. With every chord, she told her story, her struggles, her dreams, her quiet determination to rise above ridicule. The people began to listen, really listen, as the beauty of her playing grew undeniable. The performance transformed the room. The laughter and whispers stopped, replaced by a sense of awe and anticipation. Some guests leaned forward, eyes wide, as if discovering something magical for the first time. Every note she played was precise yet full of feeling, showing skill and emotion intertwined. The music was no longer just sound. It was a voice, telling the story of a life lived with perseverance and hope. The hall, once full of doubt, now felt alive with admiration. Her confidence grew with every measure, and soon, she was lost in the music entirely, forgetting the world around her. By the time she finished, the room was silent for a brief moment, caught in the spell of what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, applause erupted, growing louder and stronger, filling every corner of the hall. People stood, some clapping enthusiastically, some with tears in their eyes. Even those who had doubted her earlier could not help but be moved. The young waitress, her face flushed with emotion, stood and bowed slightly, overwhelmed by the recognition she had always dreamed of. She had done more than perform. She had touched hearts and proved that talent and passion could shine despite humble beginnings. After the performance, many approached her, complimenting her skill and asking about her journey. She spoke softly, sharing some of her story, her eyes shining with pride. She realized that the world could be harsh, but beauty and talent had a way of breaking through. That day marked a turning point, a moment when her hidden world of music met reality, and the world responded with wonder. She had faced fear, mockery, and self-doubt, and had emerged victorious, not just for herself, but for everyone who ever felt unseen. The man who had invited her smiled, impressed by how naturally she had handled the stage and captivated the audience. He knew she had a rare gift, and now so did everyone else. She had not only accepted an opportunity, she had created a memory that would be remembered by all who heard her. It was a quiet triumph, the kind that started small in a cafe and blossomed into something extraordinary. That night, as she returned home, she thought about the journey ahead, knowing that this was only the beginning of what her music could achieve. Her heart was full, her mind alive with ideas, and her spirit ready for the next steps of a life that had just begun to change. The day of the performance arrived, and the young waitress felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had prepared for weeks, practicing every melody she could imagine, thinking about how she wanted each note to sound. Yet, nothing could prepare her for the sight of the audience waiting in the grand hall. Hundreds of people, some dressed elegantly, some with curious expressions, filled the seats. She could feel their eyes on her as she entered, whispering among themselves. Some whispers carried doubt, some carried mockery. They did not see her as a musician. To them, she was a simple waitress who had stumbled onto a stage far above her station. The weight of judgment pressed down on her chest, making her stomach twist. Despite the nerves, she reminded herself why she was there. Music was her language, her way of sharing a story that words could not capture. She breathed deeply, straightened her posture, and walked toward the piano. Every step felt heavy with the expectations and assumptions of the crowd. She tried to ignore them, focusing on the smooth surface of the keys in front of her. Sitting down, she rested her hands gently on them, feeling the familiar texture beneath her fingers. The piano was old but reliable, and she knew it could carry her emotions far beyond the walls of the hall. The audience's whispers continued, but she did not let them reach her. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the quiet hours she had spent in the cafe, practicing, dreaming, imagining this exact moment. The memories strengthened her, and slowly, she pressed the first key. The note rang out softly, delicate and unsure at first, as if testing the waters. She could hear some people exchanging quiet comments, a few even snickering. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. She reminded herself that music could change minds, that her talent was not defined by their laughter. She began to play more confidently, letting her fingers move naturally across the keys. The melody started to rise, soft at first, then stronger, carrying emotion that words could never describe. The whispers faded gradually as the audience noticed the depth of her skill. Eyes widened, heads turned, and some people leaned forward in their seats, caught in the flow of the music. Every note she played told a story of hardship, determination, and hope. Her hands moved with precision, yet every chord carried the weight of her experiences. The life of a young woman who had faced struggle but refused to give up. As the performance continued, she lost herself in the music. The hall, once full of judgment, transformed into a space of wonder. People who had been skeptical or mocking now listened intently, drawn into the emotion and sincerity of her playing. The young waitress felt the music rising from her fingertips, flowing into the room, connecting her to every listener. She imagined each person as a friend, someone who would understand the meaning behind the melody, and that thought gave her courage. She could see the change in their faces, subtle at first, then more pronounced, as if the sound itself had unlocked something in their hearts. She played with everything she had, pouring every emotion into the piano. Each piece was more confident, more alive, more personal. She remembered her early mornings at the cafe, the long hours of work, the moments of doubt, and the small victories that kept her going. All of these experiences merged into the music, creating a performance that was unique, heartfelt, and unforgettable. The audience could feel the truth in her playing, the authenticity that could not be faked. Even those who had judged her before were now captivated, some with tears forming, others with mouths slightly open in amazement. The young waitress noticed a few people in the back who had started with skeptical expressions. Now they were fully attentive, their eyes fixed on her, their bodies still, as if the music had held them in place. She realized that her performance was breaking barriers, shattering assumptions. She was not just a waitress. She was a musician with a story to tell, and the piano was her voice. Every note became a bridge between her world and theirs, creating understanding, respect, and awe. As she reached the final pieces, her emotions swelled. She played with both strength and vulnerability, letting the audience experience the full spectrum of her journey. The hall, once filled with laughter and whispers, was now silent, every ear attentive, every heart moved. The music was no longer just sound. It was life itself, a testament to perseverance, talent, and unyielding spirit. She could feel the room responding, the energy of the listeners fueling her performance, encouraging her to give everything she had. When the last note rang out, a brief silence followed. It was a moment of pause, a collective intake of breath as the audience processed what they had just witnessed. Then, applause erupted. It started softly, then grew louder, stronger, filling the hall with a thunderous wave of appreciation. People stood, some clapping enthusiastically, some wiping away tears, all showing respect for the music and the musician who had touched their hearts. Even those who had mocked her initially could not help but cheer, their previous judgments replaced by genuine admiration. The young waitress felt a mixture of relief and joy. Her heart raced, but it was no longer from fear. It was from the realization that her music had reached people, that her passion had broken through prejudice, that her talent was finally recognized. She took a deep breath, allowing herself a small smile. The journey had been hard, the ridicule had been painful, but in that moment, it all felt worth it. The piano had become her voice, her courage, her statement to the world that she was more than appearances, more than a job title, more than anyone had ever assumed. After the performance, people approached her, complimenting her skill and asking about her story. She spoke softly, sharing a little about her life, the cafe, the long hours of practice, and her love for music. Each interaction reminded her that her journey was not just about herself, but about inspiring others. She realized that there were many people who, like her, had hidden talents, unrecognized dreams, and unspoken passions. Her performance had become a symbol, proof that dedication, courage, and heart could change perceptions and open doors that had seemed impossible to reach. As she left the stage, the man who had invited her smiled knowingly. He had seen her potential from the beginning, and now the audience saw it too. Her life was beginning to shift, not just in opportunity, but in confidence. She had faced mockery, doubt, and fear, and had emerged triumphant, proving that talent could not be hidden forever. That day marked a turning point, the moment when the world finally began to see her as she truly was. The young waitress, who had once been overlooked, had become a musician whose music could silence a hall, captivate hearts, and change minds. And as she walked away, she felt a quiet promise to herself. This was only the beginning of her journey, and her music would continue to touch lives in ways she had only just begun to imagine. As she settled at the piano, the young waitress felt a strange mixture of calm and nervous energy. The room was silent now, all eyes on her, a few still carrying doubt but mostly curiosity. The soft hum of anticipation filled the hall, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting her fingers rest lightly on the keys. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the countless hours she had spent practicing in the quiet corner of the cafe. Each note she had learned, each melody she had imagined, had prepared her for this very moment. Her heart raced, but it was steady, and she let the music flow through her. Her first note was delicate, almost trembling, yet it carried an undeniable beauty. The sound seemed to float across the room, reaching the ears of every listener. There was a pause as the audience adjusted, unsure what they had just heard. Whispers of curiosity replaced the earlier whispers of mockery. She continued, her fingers moving gracefully across the keys, each note more confident than the last. The music grew, filling the space with emotion and life. It was a melody that told a story without words, expressing struggles, hope, and a quiet determination that had been hidden for too long. As she played, she could feel the energy of the audience shift. The skeptical glances, the raised eyebrows, the subtle smirks, they all disappeared. People leaned forward, captivated by the authenticity and power of the music. Each chord seemed to speak directly to them, touching something deep inside. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others held their breath, caught in the rhythm and emotion of her performance. The young waitress felt a strange joy, a sense that she and the audience were connected in that moment through something greater than themselves. The melody flowed naturally, rising and falling with emotion. She remembered the long hours she had spent in the cafe, practicing on that old, worn-out piano, imagining herself in a place like this. Every memory added depth to her performance. The fear and doubt that had weighed on her heart melted away, replaced by a confidence that came from knowing she was sharing her true self. The audience could feel it too, their attention unwavering, their hearts open to the story being told through the music. Some listeners had started with doubt, expecting an ordinary performance from someone they underestimated. Now they were leaning closer, caught in the magic of what they were hearing. The young waitress could see the surprise in their eyes, the realization that she was far more than her job, her clothes, or her background. She was a musician, a storyteller, a young woman whose talent had been overlooked but was now impossible to ignore. The hall, once filled with whispers and judgment, was now filled with admiration and quiet awe. She continued to play, letting the music guide her hands, letting it express the emotions that words could not. Each piece she performed built upon the last, more complex, more powerful, yet still full of heart. She poured everything she had into the performance, every fear, every dream, every moment of doubt that had led her here. The audience responded instinctively, their bodies leaning into the sound, their expressions softening, their hearts opening to the young waitress who had been underestimated for so long. As the performance progressed, tears began to form in some eyes. The music was no longer just notes on a page. It was a journey, a story of struggle, courage, and triumph. The young waitress felt a deep connection with everyone listening, sensing their emotions as clearly as her own. The hall seemed to breathe with her, rising and falling with each chord, the audience and performer becoming one in the shared experience of music. It was a moment of transformation, where assumptions and judgments fell away, leaving only respect, admiration, and the beauty of raw talent. The final piece began, a slow, powerful melody that carried the weight of her journey. She played with intention, each note resonating in the room, vibrating through the air and into the hearts of the audience. There was a quiet intensity in the hall, as if everyone were holding their breath, waiting for the last note to land. When it came, it lingered, filling every corner of the space with its resonance. For a brief moment, there was silence, a collective pause as the audience absorbed the power and emotion of what they had just witnessed. Then the room erupted. Applause, cheers, and whistles filled the hall, the sound almost overwhelming in its intensity. People stood, clapping and shouting their appreciation, moved to their feet by the sheer beauty and passion of the young waitress's performance. Some wiped away tears, others embraced friends, all sharing in the profound impact of the music. The young waitress, breathless and trembling, allowed herself a small smile, realizing that her talent had finally been seen, her dedication recognized, and her story understood. The man who had invited her earlier smiled proudly from the audience, knowing that she had surpassed all expectations. She had taken a chance, faced fear, and delivered a performance that would be remembered. Her music had silenced doubt, mocked assumptions, and left an indelible mark on everyone in the hall. The young waitress stood, acknowledging the applause with humility and gratitude. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a realization that her dreams were no longer just imagined. They were alive and tangible. After the performance, many approached her to express their admiration. They asked about her journey, her practice, and how she had developed such talent. She spoke softly, sharing her story in small pieces, letting them glimpse the dedication and passion that had brought her here. People listened, fascinated, inspired by the transformation they had just witnessed. Some admitted they had doubted her, and now they were humbled by the depth of her skill and the emotion she had conveyed. That night, as she left the hall, the young waitress felt a profound change within herself. She had faced fear, ridicule, and uncertainty, and had emerged victorious. The music that had once been her secret world in a small cafe had now touched hundreds of hearts. She realized that her journey was only beginning, that there were many more opportunities to share her gift, and that her passion could inspire others who felt unseen or underestimated. Her performance had not only proven her talent but had also created a lasting impact on the audience. They would remember the young waitress who had silenced a hall with her music, who had transformed doubt into admiration, who had shown that dedication, courage, and heart could overcome any obstacle. The young woman walked away from the stage that night with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace the future and all the possibilities it held. Her music had spoken louder than any words, and it would continue to carry her story forward, touching lives and breaking barriers wherever she played. The applause continued to echo through the hall, the sound washing over the young waitress like a wave of warmth and disbelief. Her hands rested gently on the piano, trembling slightly from the adrenaline and the depth of emotion she had poured into her performance. She had shared her heart through every note, and now, for the first time, she felt the full weight of appreciation from an audience that had once doubted her. People were on their feet, clapping, cheering, and shouting in admiration. Some had tears streaming down their faces, moved by the raw honesty and beauty of her music. She took a moment to catch her breath, looking out at the crowd. Faces that had been skeptical, some even mocking at first, now glowed with admiration and awe. She saw heads nodding, hands clapping, and eyes wide with amazement. It was a powerful transformation, a moment where judgment had turned into respect, and laughter had been replaced by silence filled with wonder. The young waitress felt a mixture of relief and joy. She had stepped into this challenge uncertain of the outcome, and now she had created a memory that would last for everyone in the room. After the initial wave of applause settled into sustained cheering, she stood, bowing slightly. Her heart was full, and she smiled genuinely, feeling both proud and humbled. The man who had invited her watched from the side, a smile of satisfaction on his face. He had seen her potential from the first moment, and now the world could see it too. She realized that all the practice, all the small moments spent alone at the piano in the cafe, had prepared her for this very moment. Every hardship, every long day of work, every whisper of doubt she had faced had led her to this stage. People began approaching her as she left the piano. One by one, they expressed their admiration, some shaking her hand, some offering kind words, and others simply smiling, unable to find the words to capture the emotions they felt. They asked how long she had been playing, how she learned to express such depth through the piano, and how she had stayed so calm in front of such a large crowd. She spoke softly, sharing pieces of her story, the quiet hours of practice, the cafe where she worked, and the moments of doubt that had challenged her. She wanted them to understand that her performance was not just about talent, but about perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself. The young waitress walked through the crowd, still processing everything that had just happened. She felt an unusual mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Her life had shifted in a way she had only dreamed of, and she realized that the journey ahead would be full of possibilities she had never imagined. Opportunities were opening up, doors that had seemed closed for years were now ajar, waiting for her to step through. She felt a quiet excitement, knowing that this performance was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She thought about the people she had encountered in the past who had doubted her, who had laughed at her, or dismissed her abilities. It no longer mattered. She had proven, most importantly to herself, that she could rise above the judgments of others and succeed on her own terms. The applause, the admiration, and the recognition from the audience were confirmation that talent and dedication could break through barriers, no matter how high or how firmly they seemed set. She understood now that her worth was not defined by what others thought, but by her own commitment and the courage to pursue her dreams. Later, when she returned home, she sat quietly by herself, reflecting on the day. She thought about how far she had come, from the small cafe where she had spent countless hours practicing alone, to this grand hall where she had captivated an entire audience. The contrast was incredible, and yet it felt natural, as if every step she had taken had led to this moment. She allowed herself to feel proud without arrogance, acknowledging the hard work, patience, and persistence that had brought her here. Her story began to spread through the town, shared by people who had witnessed her performance. Others who had once doubted her now spoke of her talent with admiration. Invitations came for her to play at local events, charity gatherings, and even schools. People wanted to hear her music, to experience the emotion and authenticity that had captivated them in the hall. The young waitress realized that her passion had become more than a personal dream. It was now inspiring others, showing that perseverance and belief could turn hidden talent into something extraordinary. Despite the sudden attention, she remained humble. She continued to work at the cafe, greeting customers with her gentle smile, but now with a quiet confidence that came from knowing her worth. She helped young musicians who were overlooked or discouraged, encouraging them to practice, dream, and believe in themselves. She understood the importance of nurturing talent, of supporting others who might be struggling as she had. Her journey had taught her that success was not just about personal recognition, but also about using one's abilities to uplift others. The young waitress also realized that her music had given her a new way to connect with people. Through each performance, she could communicate emotions and stories that went beyond words. She understood that music was a universal language, capable of bridging gaps, breaking down walls, and creating understanding between people of different backgrounds. She had experienced the power of music firsthand, how it could transform a room, change perceptions, and touch hearts. Now, she had the opportunity to continue sharing this gift with the world. With each performance that followed, her confidence grew. She experimented with new melodies, explored different styles, and pushed herself to improve. Yet, she always stayed true to the essence of her music, the honesty, emotion, and heart that had first captivated the audience in the hall. She remembered the quiet moments in the cafe, the hours spent alone with the piano, and the dreams that had fueled her dedication. Those memories grounded her, reminding her that her success was built on a foundation of passion and perseverance. The young waitress understood that her journey was ongoing. She had achieved a remarkable milestone, but there was still more to explore, more music to create, and more hearts to touch. Each new opportunity was a chance to continue growing, to continue sharing her story through her performances. She felt grateful for the experiences that had shaped her, for the people who had supported her, and even for the challenges that had tested her resilience. They had all contributed to the depth and authenticity of her music. Looking back, she realized that the ridicule and doubt she had faced were part of what had made her performance so powerful. Without those moments of struggle, she might not have developed the strength, determination, and emotional depth that had allowed her to captivate the audience. She understood that her journey was not just about talent, but about perseverance, courage, and the willingness to continue despite fear and uncertainty. That realization filled her with a quiet pride and a renewed sense of purpose. Her life continued to evolve, with each performance opening new doors and new possibilities. She became a symbol of inspiration for many, demonstrating that dreams could be achieved with dedication and heart. People who had once overlooked her now celebrated her, and her story encouraged others to pursue their passions, no matter how unlikely success might seem. The young waitress had transformed from a quiet, unnoticed figure into a musician whose talent and courage left a lasting impact on everyone who experienced it. And so, she continued her journey, carrying with her the lessons of perseverance, humility, and the transformative power of music. Every note she played, every performance she gave, was a reminder of how far she had come and how much further she could go. She knew that her music had the ability to change lives, to inspire, and to connect people in ways that words alone could never achieve. The applause, the recognition, and the admiration were not just for her skill, but for the journey she had undertaken, the courage she had shown, and the heart she had poured into every note. After the performance, the young waitress returned home with a heart full of emotion and a mind buzzing with possibilities. The experience had been life-changing. The recognition, the applause, the tears of admiration from the audience. These were all things she had only dreamed about before. She walked through the quiet streets, thinking about the journey that had brought her here, from the small cafe where she had spent countless hours alone practicing on the old piano, to the grand hall where hundreds had listened and been moved by her music. Each step felt surreal, but also like the natural result of years of dedication and passion. The next days were filled with messages, calls, and invitations. Local organizers, schools, and community centers wanted her to perform. Her story began to spread online, shared by people who had attended the performance. Many were inspired by her journey, the quiet determination of a young woman who had been overlooked and mocked, but had risen to show her true talent. She was amazed at how much impact one performance could have, not just for herself, but for others who might see a piece of their own struggle in her story. Even with all the attention, she remained humble. She continued to work at the cafe, greeting customers with the same gentle smile as before, but now with a quiet confidence that came from knowing her worth. People who had visited the cafe before noticed a change in her demeanor. There was a light in her eyes, a calm pride in her posture, a subtle assurance that she had achieved something remarkable. She spoke softly to those who asked, sharing her journey with honesty and humility, wanting them to understand that talent and perseverance were more important than appearances or background. She also began mentoring others, young musicians who had talent but had been overlooked or discouraged. She understood how it felt to be unnoticed, to feel that your abilities did not matter. She encouraged them to practice, to dream, and to believe in themselves. She shared her experiences, the hours of practice, the self-doubt, and the moments of triumph. Her guidance was gentle but inspiring, showing them that their own dreams could be realized with dedication and heart. She wanted to make sure that others could find the courage to share their gifts, just as she had. Over time, her performances became more frequent. She was invited to play at charity events, local gatherings, and community celebrations. Each performance was unique, filled with emotion and authenticity. She experimented with new pieces, explored different styles, and challenged herself to grow as a musician. Yet, through every change and every new opportunity, she remained true to the core of her music, the honesty, passion, and heart that had first captured the audience in the hall. Her music was not just notes on a page. It was a reflection of her life, her struggles, her dreams, and her victories. People began to see her differently. No longer just a waitress, she had become a symbol of inspiration, proof that talent and dedication could overcome obstacles. Those who had once doubted her, or who had judged her by her appearance, now admired her and spoke of her with respect. Her story encouraged others to pursue their passions, no matter how difficult or unlikely it seemed. She had shown that the right combination of skill, heart, and perseverance could turn hidden potential into extraordinary achievement. The young waitress herself continued to grow, not only as a musician but also as a person. She learned the value of patience, humility, and resilience. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that each performance, each new opportunity, was another chance to connect with people, to inspire, and to express herself. She never forgot the small cafe where it all began, the quiet moments at the old piano, the long hours of practice, and the doubts she had faced. Those experiences grounded her, reminding her where she came from and the effort it had taken to reach where she was now. Her music became a bridge, connecting people across backgrounds, generations, and experiences. Listeners felt her emotions, resonated with her story, and found hope in her determination. She discovered the power of music to heal, to inspire, and to unite. She saw that her talent was not just for personal achievement, but a tool to touch lives and make a difference in the world. The young waitress realized that this was her calling, to share her music, her heart, and her story with everyone who needed to hear it. As time passed, her life continued to evolve. She received invitations to perform at more prestigious events, collaborate with other musicians, and even teach music in schools. Each new opportunity was a chance to reach more people, to continue the work she had begun when she first sat at the piano in that quiet cafe. Yet, she never let the recognition change who she was. She remained humble, approachable, and kind, remembering that her success was built not only on talent, but on perseverance, hard work, and the belief that her music could make a difference. Looking back, she understood the full impact of her journey. The ridicule, the doubt, the long hours of practice. They had all shaped her, making her stronger and more determined. The audience's applause had been more than validation. It had been a turning point, a moment when her dedication met recognition, And when her dream became reality, she had faced fear and uncertainty and had triumphed, proving to herself and others that talent and courage could overcome any obstacle. Her story continued to inspire others. Young musicians, overlooked artists, and anyone who had ever been underestimated saw in her journey a reflection of their own potential. They saw that dedication, heart, and perseverance could turn dreams into reality, no matter the starting point. She became a living example that success was not just about skill, but about courage, resilience, and the willingness to step forward even when others doubted you. The young waitress had transformed her life, not through luck or chance, but through consistent effort, passion, and belief in herself. She had shown that even in a world full of judgment and skepticism, talent and heart could shine through. Her music had the power to move people, change perceptions, and create lasting memories. She understood now that her journey was not just her own, but part of something larger. A story that could inspire, uplift, and connect people through the universal language of music. As she continued her path, she never stopped dreaming, never stopped practicing, and never stopped sharing her gift. Each new performance was a chance to tell her story, to inspire, and to touch hearts. The young waitress had begun her journey quietly, unnoticed, but through courage, perseverance, and music, she had shown the world who she truly was. And she knew that her journey, her music, and her story would continue to grow, reaching more people, spreading hope, and reminding everyone that hidden talent and unwavering dedication could create extraordinary moments in life.